Hello there, and welcome back to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, international football, and sometimes MLS because we're Americans. This week, Arsenal traveled to Lisbon to face Sporting Club de Portugal in the first leg of the Champions League quarterfinal, and then return home to face Bournemouth in the Premier League. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove. It's been a long weekend, sports-wise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is my first time having four teams across three sports, like all going on at the same time. Now that I've added basketball and baseball to the rotation, so like last year, I didn't start following the Cubs closely until Arsenal was almost done. So there's a little bit of overlap. But I mean, the Bulls are absolutely not going to make it to the playoffs this season. But for now, that's not even a question. But for the past couple weeks, I've had the Cubs, the Yankees, the Bulls, and Arsenal. And it's exciting.
You know, that's one of the things, because I end up following far too many teams, to be honest, but quite a few. One of the benefits of that, of course, is no matter what's going on, at least one of them seems to be winning. Not this weekend, but yeah. But But you know what? Tomorrow's a new day.
So a couple things on the home front that were kind of fun. So as I've mentioned before, as my son watches and participates in soccer, I give him trading cards to, help keep him excited about that idea. Topps took over the Premier League trading card license from Panini, who had it for a while. And this season, so Topps does what they do. They have a lot of special cards that you can get sometimes. Reed got an actual autograph card. So this is like a trading card and a pack that he opened up that actually had a real player's signature. It actually had an Arsenal player's signature. He got a signed Trossard card.
Nice.
So, yeah, that was really exciting. And we'll talk about it more later, but I think, if I'm remembering right, there's a chance that I may be seeing Belgium in the World Cup, so we may get to see Trossard in person.
There you go.
But closer to home than that, even, my son had his first soccer match of the spring season today, so he didn't keep his clean sheet record. He didn't start off to a good start this season, but his team won 5-2, and he had a few good saves in there, so it was overall a good way to start off, a nice performance. I've actually started getting into live streaming his games so that our family scattered about the country at the moment, and some of it permanently scattered are able to watch. So
cool. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit of a learning experience. I got the Game Changer streaming kit from Dick's Sporting Goods. Like Game Changer is the app that all the youth sports are allowed to use, and it's really heavily pushed with a couple of them. Mm-hmm. And they have a partnership that's basically owned. I think the app is owned by Dick's. So in their store, they sell this kit where it's like a little box that you can mount your phone in that protects it from the sun, and has a little pocket so you can put a big battery on your phone, which I've been doing. But it comes with this dinky little tripod that kept on blowing over today. So I found a novel solution to that. I had my 32-ounce water bottle that has a little like strap on the top of it. I was able to hang that from a hook at the bottom of the center of the tripod that actually pretty effectively anchored it. It only tipped over one time. So that was a fun approach.
Perils of live broadcasting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's actually funny. We're not going to do a full-blown messy room. We're not going to really talk about MLS so much today. But I did watch some of Miami's match yesterday against New York Red Bulls, or Red Bulls New York, or Red Bull New York, whatever they're called. We don't particularly care.
New Jersey, no stars.
I did notice Miami has the star above their crest on their jersey now. But anyway, what I noticed right off the bat with this match it looks good. The broadcast quality, and maybe this is just having like new cameras in NU Stadium, where they're now playing. Maybe that was an upgrade, but for whatever reason, it just looked way, way better than what I ever see with Arsenal. And it's always been a complaint. It's never really looked good for Arsenal, but it actually looked even better. So. And I can't compete with that because I've got like a single fixed perspective camera. But, like I'm trying to actually watch the game with my eyes. The camera is just kind of set there doing its thing. I'm not like micromanaging it, like panning as the players move around. So.
No, but it'll only be a matter of time before that comes. I think we all know this about you.
All right, so World Cup is upon us, and the ticket sales, as we began talking about last week, have not been very smooth. Is one way to put it.
Yeah. Now, granted, and I've generally been less critical than other people of FIFA on this point. Obviously, they have something that's in incredibly high demand, the World Cup. Yes, the ticket prices are high, but they are selling quite a lot of them, so are they too high? Well, I don't know about that.
The invisible hand of the free market in action.
I mean that, but that's what prices are, right? They're signals. They're signals about desirability. Obviously, there's a fixed cost on these things. Obviously, and this is the part that I'm a little more curious about is the level of sales. Or obviously, we know certain games are going to be higher demand, certainly amongst the group stage games. Obviously, knockout stage games are going to be more valuable. Are going to be more in higher demand. I guess like. I know it's easy to sit here and say it's absurd that people are paying, what is it, $10,000 to get $20,000 to go see the final. On the other hand, like if those tickets were cheaper, like they would be gone, in a moment.
Well, of course.
And how many of those would then go to people who would then resell them for
that amount?
The same
yeah.
So
exactly.
I'm sympathetic on the cost question, but I kind of understand also why it happens. So I don't feel like. But this one, FIFA's going to take heat on this one, and they're not going to get any defense from me on this. Like, apparently, what has happened is that they've been finally giving out the seats for tickets purchased. So I know my brother has told me the section in the row where we have our seats for Netherlands, Sweden here in Houston. Which I'm very excited to see. And actually having seen the sections we're in, NRG's nice. It's big, but I feel like you're never super far away from the field anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the high up seats don't feel that far away, I've thought.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I'm kind of excited about that. But apparently what people are seeing is that their seats are in sections, theoretically appear to be in sections that are not what they paid for. That basically they paid a price for, I guess, what was the tier 1 is supposed to be the closest, highest price.
Yeah.
They were buying a tier 1 ticket and getting a seat in what appears to be tier 2.
Mm-hmm.
And part of this is because they've been selling FIFA has been removing some of those tier 1 seats to give them for boxes or other special seats being given away. They're also apparently adding another tier of seats, which of course is even higher priced. Like, man, this is. This is not good.
I mean, specifically what people are saying. So yeah, you would buy, when the tickets were offered early on, you would buy a tier 1 seat, or you would be given the opportunity to buy a tier 1 seat. And tier 1, you would see on the map for the stadium which sections of seating would be included in tier 1, which other ones were tier 2, and then tier 3. And what they're saying is that, they're getting seats for a section that was not what was colored on the map. And FIFA is saying essentially, well, that was to give you a rough indication of what types of seats would be included. We didn't mean for you to think that you would be getting a seat in the sections that we specifically colored, telling you this is where they were. It's kind of indefensible.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a terribly shocking move from an organization like FIFA. That's all.
I think, I don't know if it's the article you shared or something else that I'd read, but they actually did relabel the sections midway through. Also, it's like they don't have a leg to stand on with it. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, but I mean, it does kind of go into like. who's really gonna like go after them for it? I mean, that's the problem with like the fan complaints. Fans will complain, and they should.
Mm-hmm.
But people are. I mean, as I said, I bought a ticket. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not giving it back. You know,
Yeah.
I
Well,
know it,
yeah.
and no one who has is. So
Yeah.
that's the line given somewhere along the line was like, because there's a lot of noise around the World Cup and funding for this and that, and concerns about security and other things and all
Mm-hmm.
of this, and how is this World Cup going to be? And the World Cup's going to be fine. Why is the World Cup going to be fine? Because the World Cup is always fine. Because in the end, it's a sporting event. The games are usually, we're going to remember all the good ones, all the great goals, the big moments, the fun matchups, and we'll just kind of, oh yeah. And then there was that other game that kind of wasn't a lot of fun. But remember the game. Remember that goal? That was awesome. Like that's kind of how this always goes. So
Yeah.
FIFA kind of gets away with it. Why? Because they have the one thing that everybody really wants, which is the World Cup. As long as they have that, and they kind of have us over a barrel a little bit, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I mean, so I had my ticket purchasing experience this week. So, as mentioned last week, I tried getting into the last minute sales, and it was a complete mess. But after talking to you about it and realizing that the prices I'd seen were actually maybe more reasonable than they had appeared to be at first, I went back and saw, oh, some of those same seats are still available at those same prices. Okay. It was the weirdest thing, though. You go to the site and say, okay, they're offering whatever it was, $500, $600 a seat in a particular section. You'd say, okay, I want 3 tickets. And you would go into that section and there would be no seats lit up. Like the section was lit up, but there were no seats that were available in that section, even though they said there were seats available in that section. And so I say, okay, well, look, whatever. Give me the 3 best seats you have in this tier. And it would say, okay. And then you'd go to add them to your cart. Oh, sorry, they're not available. But you let me pick 3. You didn't let me pick 4, but you let me pick 3 or 2 or 1, and none of those would result in any seats being offered. So on a technical level, their sales site is also just broken and not working the way it's intended to, regardless of whatever other soft failures there are in their decisions on the matter. But so ultimately, I ended up buying the tickets through StubHub, which was itself an interesting experience. So for one thing that I liked, and I don't remember if StubHub has always done this, maybe they have and I just didn't notice, but they're telling you the all-in price inclusive of all fees, which is good. Like I appreciate them being upfront about it. I do remember buying from them or others in the past that you would then get the fees tacked on afterwards and be like, what the heck, like hundreds of dollars of fees.
Yeah, that's a fairly recent shift, and I'm fairly certain. I don't want to say it was definitely enforced by a court decision or at least strongly encouraged by legal action. So yeah, I mean that is a relatively new change and not one they would have made without certain outside.
Well, sure, exactly, because they want to get you in the door at what you think is going to be a lower price, and you're like, I guess I'll just have to pay the fees. Yeah, so it is a consumer friendly change, and I applaud it. Regardless of what was required for it to be realized. But so I buy the tickets, and then I've bought on StubHub and SeatGeek and other like secondhand sites before. And usually, there's some handoff between you and the person selling them. And then StubHub sends you, typically it's like a PDF of the tickets or something like that, like something that you have some artifact in your digital hand, so to speak, that you can take with you to the match. Well, that's not what happened here. I was told that I would get an email soon with info about how to get the tickets myself now from FIFA. So what the email that I ended up getting had was, it says, okay, here is an email address we created for you that we registered with FIFA, that we had the person who sold the tickets transfer them to. So even though I already had a FIFA account from trying to buy the tickets myself, I had to create a new FIFA account with a made up email address. And once I created that account with all the rest of the information being my own, I was then able to accept the transfer. And as far as I know, I do have the tickets now. What I would like to do, and I am led to believe from their help documentation that I should be able to do, is to transfer them over to my own account, assuming that there are no fees associated with that. And I can't safely make that assumption, but hopefully that feature is made so that you can transfer to a friend or family member or something outside of resale. And no, FIFA doesn't get a fee because you're just transferring them. You're not selling them. But yeah, so when the dust settled, I ended up with tickets to a round of 32 match that is going to be played in Dallas, and I'm trying to look it up because I had sent a picture of the tickets. Well, not the tickets themselves, but it's going to be Group D versus Group G. Now, Group D is the United States, right?
Yes, actually, that's the.
So
you'd be looking at the runner-up, and so the runner-up of Group D.
Right.
So it's July 3rd.
Yes, the July 3rd match, which worked out great because even though these are like afternoon matches, that's a holiday. I'm off from work, so yeah.
Well, right, and it's also you're indoors in Dallas in July.
Indoors in Dallas, and yeah.
Well, Arlington. Let's be honest. Yeah. So that is the second place team from Group D against the second place team from Group G. Now, you're correct. Right. D is the U.S. group, which, by the way, I mean, now that Turkey's in there, the U.S. could very well finish in second. You may be headed to a U.S. game, which would be pretty cool for you.
Definitely.
Congrats. Obviously, I hope that doesn't happen.
Because you want to see.
I'd rather they win their group, not,
or is it because Drew, I think Drew was able to see the round of 32 match with Team USA if they finish first. Right?
I believe he has an opportunity at a ticket. We'll see about that. The Group G, by the way, is Belgium, Egypt, Iran, and New Zealand.
Right. So I might see Trossard if Belgium finishes second. Yeah.
I would not expect that. I'm
not
going to say Belgium's going to walk that group, but Belgium is by far the best team in that group.
Okay.
Egypt, I think, is probably your most likely, although Egypt, I think, is... Egypt is one of the strongest teams in Africa in continental competition, but they have struggled mightily. They've won the Cup of Nations 7 times, but they've struggled mightily to get to the World Cup. And I don't believe they've won a game in their 2 previous appearances.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yes, they had. They went to Italia 90, had 2 draws and a loss, and then 3 losses in Russia 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So. It would, but that group with Iran, obviously Iran's team is kind of an interesting mystery on its own. And then of course, New Zealand, who, I mean, I hope they have a really fun time in their games. So.
Yeah. So okay. So I'm not going to hold my breath for Trossard, but
no,
it's a remote possibility.
Yeah. My guess is just looking through that. I mean, is probably. I feel like my guess right now is Egypt. But then obviously it depends kind of on Group D. I'm hesitant. It's an easy pick to say the U.S. would finish in second in that group, which I don't think is unfair. Behind Turkey, but I obviously fingers crossed that doesn't happen. I think they could easily win that group. I mean, there's a world where they go 0-3. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they will advance, but it'd be pretty catastrophic.
So, as far as hoping for them to finish first, is that because they'll play a third place team in the round of 32 and they're more likely to advance?
Well, I just want them to finish in first because I just want them to keep winning games. That's
for their mentality, right?
Or just for actually winning games. Like, winning is fun. Winning is more fun than losing. This is not. I have no expectations, to be honest, of seeing the U.S. play in live in the World Cup. Now, I would, of course, love that, but I don't expect it. So, there's no personal angle where I could be, there's no real angle where I could be like, oh, this would be better for me if it happened. No. I just want them to win because I just want them to win.
Yeah. I mean, just for the heck of it, I mean, how do you think they stack up if they did finish second in their group and were to play against, let's say Belgium is I guess so you think Egypt is the most likely to be number 2?
I feel like Egypt or Iran.
So how do you think Team USA, in the form that you've seen with the players who they'll have available, including Tyler Adams, who we saw play Arsenal this weekend, how do you think that they might do against an Egypt or an Iran?
I think they could beat them. They beat Iran 4 years ago to get out of the group in Qatar. Just by FIFA rankings, we should say Iran is ranked 20th in the world. Egypt is ranked 34th.
Oh, okay.
The
Interesting.
U.S. Yeah, so I both of them are pretty solid, and I think both of them would represent. I think we're well, granted, I'm looking at the FIFA rankings. This was the one from November, so they were a little different, but not really right now, because this also is the U.S. as being 14th, which I feel is generous. I think they're pretty. I think they're pretty close. I think it would be a very. I think they'd be a very good game. I think is the best
cool.
way to.
Yeah. It should be fun. The seats we got are decent. They're like the top section of seating, but relatively central. We're kind of like maybe a third of the way in from the goal line. So yeah, it's should be a good time. Definitely looking forward to it. So, meanwhile, apparently the referees have been allocated for the World Cup.
Yes, the announcements have been made. World Cup does takes it upon themselves to bring in referees from every confederation.
Okay.
So there are a handful of referees. There is going to be an all-female refereeing crew led by Tori Penso, who referees in MLS, as with two American assistants, Catherine Nesbitt and Brooke Mayo. More interesting for us, we are still technically an Arsenal podcast. There are two Premier League referees who are making their way to who will be coming. Michael Oliver, who oversaw Saturday's game against Bournemouth, and then also Anthony Taylor. Neither of which terribly surprises me, even if I'm not terribly thrilled by either of those prospects. And I believe they said there's another one. Yes, Jared Gillett will also be there, but as a VAR assistant.
Now, you mentioned the all-female refereeing crew. That leads me to a broader question. Do they generally keep entire refereeing crews together? I mean, I could see logistically, just for speaking the same native language as each other to ease communication, that might make sense if they're from the same country or at least the same region or something.
Yes, and you'll see it, for example, when we're watch the Champions League. Our referees will be all from. Well, the entire refereeing crew will all be from the same country. It's for their for the sake of their communication.
Sure.
So it will be a crew that has been selected.
Okay, cool. Interesting. All right. This midweek match this past week was the opening leg of the quarterfinals. We traveled to Lisbon in Portugal to face Sporting CP. You mentioned don't call them Sporting Lisbon, and I've definitely heard people since you said that calling them Sporting Lisbon.
Yes, they are insistent on this. Fair enough. The team's name is Sporting Club Portugal, not Sporting Lisbon. That is not their name. So fair enough.
But yeah, this was the match that we won this week.
Yes, and obviously, since you're very interested in it, we had a German officiating crew for this one, which again, not unusual. To have obviously you don't want your referees aren't going to be from the country that either of the two teams comes from. But yeah, we walked out of this first leg of the Champions League quarterfinals, and we walked out of the Estadio Jose Avalade with a 1-0 win. 1-0 to the Arsenal.
Yeah, in spectacular fashion. We did not feel for most of the match that it was going to work out that way. At least toward the end, it seemed like we were going to be lucky to walk away with a draw and then win it at home and pretend the whole thing never happened.
Well, I wouldn't say pretend the whole thing never happened, but I guess
essentially from the two-leg aggregate score perspective, yeah.
So because it's midweek, obviously watching live is very difficult for me, because I work. But I was unable to watch this game. I saw bits and pieces of the first half, but I had to watch the game on replay. So I went in knowing the results and sort of hearing a lot of the conversation about it and our play style and all that. I'll be honest, and having seen Arsenal play some uninspiring performances lately, I don't know that I would say this one was one of them. This is let's start with the obvious. Sporting is not Sporting is not a bad side. I think they were unbeaten in their last 17 at home. They'd beaten PSG earlier in the Champions League. This is not an easy place to go and get a result.
No.
And I mean, at some point, as I was, just tracking the score on my phone throughout the afternoon, I would have been satisfied with 0-0 going back to the Emirates. I feel like we're strong enough. We'll be able, my expectation will be that we'll be able to beat them at home. So to come away with a point like that. Overall, though, I thought minus one or two instances in particular, as we'll mention about 6 minutes in. Overall, though, I thought we did a pretty good job of limiting their opportunities. We didn't create a lot for ourselves, but overall, I thought we did a good job of sort of keeping things quiet, kind of taking, and that's one, that's a difficult place to go with a good, fan base that was really up for the game that night. And I thought we did a good job kind of taking the air out of it, out of the game, taking the air out of the supporters. So,
yeah.
In a sense, I feel, again, minus a couple of shaky moments. Overall, though, I thought we played just fine. In some ways, a little bit like the Bayer Leverkusen game. Like, we didn't really. It kind of same thing. We scored that goal. We scored the goal in that game. We got the penalty. What was that in stoppage time, as well. So
yeah.
Overall, I thought this was actually a solid, if unspectacular, performance with a pretty strong lineup against what I thought was decent opposition. Obviously, it's not PSG, it's not Bayern, but
right.
We our seeding got us the easiest possible probably the easiest possible opponent, and we took care of business. I don't feel particularly bad about this result at all.
No, I mean, it seems like for whatever reason this season, we seem to always turn it on under the European lights, like these UEFA matches. I don't know, we have done very well this season, no matter how poorly we may be doing elsewhere. There's something about it. Now, clearly this week, it did feel like we were playing this like it's a first leg. Like, we weren't necessarily playing to win, or at least not to win emphatically. We were maybe playing to a draw, and we got lucky toward the end a little bit, but stronger than we've seen elsewhere the last couple weeks, including this weekend,
Well, right. Obviously, the comparison point is to the weekend, and of course, not just the game we just played against Southampton. We'll talk about the Bournemouth game as well. But I got to be honest, I didn't feel that way watching this one in the same way. Now, again, the circumstances are a little different. Obviously, as a knockout tie, the result is all that matters. Or it matters in the sense that you're not thinking about it in combination with too much else. We're not worried about games other places. All that matters is what we do in this place at this moment. And there, I thought overall, I think the big difference in this one between so many of the performances we've seen recently was Martin Odegaard. To have him available, I thought he was very good in this one. Sort of, obviously moving the ball around, driving play forward. Very excited to see him. And obviously, the other big one was David Raya being back in the team. And I know I've been a little nicer to Kepa than other people have, but I said this again. Raya is a better keeper, and he showed it to us, including very early on.
Yeah, that was really spectacular. So the ball was hit toward the crossbar, essentially. He manages to leap and extend his hand up and out to the side and just get enough on it to the point where when you see it live, you aren't even necessarily sure that he makes contact. It's only when you see it slowed down that you see the trajectory just kind of slightly bend and the ball clangs off of the bottom of the crossbar going back into play. And then Saliba had a great header just to get it back out of the box after that point. But great reflexive save from Raya. That was really something. Yeah,
boy, he has to do that. He does have that in his bag, right? He's not renowned as a shot stopper, and that's fair. It's not. We talked about this. Is not really what we ask him to do. We ask him to do a lot of other things. But he's had a few moments this season, quite a few moments this season, where he's been called on to do something like that, to make a save out of nothing. Credit to we talk about the shot. Honestly, the better one was the ball into the attacking player. It was a heck of a ball, a heck of a pass to spring in and give him that opportunity. And certainly, I think like from a sporting perspective, you're really ruining that opportunity. Like, man, that was a great opportunity we had. I mean, to set all that up, you're not going to get that many more chances like that against Arsenal. They can't be thinking that, and it kind of didn't. So, you know, good job overall by Raya. Honestly, he was my man of this match. I thought he was very good overall. The save he had one or two other saves. I said they didn't get any chances. They got a couple. But he had one or two other saves. Really sort of, and then just that thing he does, and we talked about this way back when we first joined the team. And Arteta talks about like he doesn't. It's not what he does; it's what he stops from happening. The degree to which he can kind of put his foot on the ball, control the ball, get up in the box and get it, pluck out crosses and sort of break up opportunities. And I think we saw a lot of that in this one too. And again, I don't think we lost the City game or the Southampton game because of Kepa, but there are things that Raya can do, especially passing wise, that Kepa has proven unable to do to the standards that Arsenal requires.
I don't know that I agree with your wording on that with Kepa. Like, I think we very clearly did lose the City match because of him. I think it's very clear that the particular mistakes that he made would not have been made by Raya. And I think it's very likely that we might have won that cup if Raya had been in there. But that's different.
Let me just...
Yeah,
I'm not going to let the other 10 players on the field off the hook for that performance in the City game. We're not going to talk about the City game too much. That's my problem with Kepa. I'm not going to escape listen, obvious mistakes. Definitely was. We obviously could have been better tactically. We talked about that.
It was not all him. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that performance was poor all around. Let's not scapegoat him on this.
No, but the rest of what I was going to say though is like I don't fault Arteta for playing him. I'm not saying that he should have played Raya because that would have gotten us the result. I agree with his reasoning and that he would do it again. That's fine. But anyway, but yeah, no, it's definitely good seeing him in action.
Yeah.
So from there, the next big event of this match was what we thought for a little while was the go-ahead goal scored by Zubimendi from incredible range. It was a really nice, like, long shot. But he didn't seem to really celebrate it super hard.
I mean, I think everyone kind of knew. And listen to the Arscast, I think. They said like it didn't seem like the Sporting keeper really made a play for the ball. Like almost like he kind of like everybody kind of knew Gyökeres was offside. Let's rip the band-aid off on that one. So the pass comes in to Gyökeres, he's onside when he receives the ball, but when the pass is made, he's ahead of the defenders. Comes back in, gets the ball, lays it off for Zubimendi, who hits it from long range. Gyökeres is offside. That's a goal called back. Gyökeres has to do a little better job getting back there. He does.
It's funny, when we were talking before we recorded, I was defending him a little bit on this, but watching the replay of it again, he's just kind of moseying his way back toward being onside before the pass is made. And he needs to be more aware of his position at all times to always be ready for the pass and always be onside.
At the very least, with the ball still in the general vicinity, it's one thing. Exactly. It's one thing if the ball had been cleared back out, to back to Saliba or something, and start, doing that thing where we pass around the back line a bunch of times,
right?
But there, like the ball's still very much in position. He's got to get back.
Exactly.
It's frustrating, because that could have been, because that's a real opportunity lost there too, because if we score earlier, now Sporting gets desperate. They maybe start to open up a little bit. It might create some opportunities for us going forward. And maybe, I don't want to extrapolate this too far and say Gyökeres cost us, a massive lead, but if we can walk out of Lisbon at 2-0 up, I mean, that's, obviously a huge advantage. At that point, I don't want to say it's over.
Yeah,
coming back home up 2-0, you feel more than good about your chances.
Yeah, exactly. But ultimately, it got to stoppage time, and our subs did their thing.
Good performances. I think really in terms of our performances in the Champions League, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, right? Some of it is the way other teams play against us is very different than the kind of play we see when we're in England. Some of it is also the talent level, and I think that was a little bit telling here. And we've got players. Martinelli loves the Champions League games. Havertz loves the Champions League games. Martinelli especially is really useful running after tired defenders late on in games. And you saw this one, he gets the ball, and how many times have we seen Martinelli take the ball and then drive down the sideline and then cut in from when he's up against the goal line, and he can create opportunities doing that, but that's kind of the go-to move, right?
Or more often kind of get stuck at the goal line and have to either play it out off of someone's leg or just turn the ball over. Sometimes it doesn't work successfully a lot. Yeah.
I mean, when it leads to a corner, we're not really bothered by it, obviously.
No, but yeah. If he can manage that, that's not the worst. But yeah, so this time, he decided to drive in. Yeah, it was nice. He juked back and forth, psyched out the player, and then found Kai Havertz, and there we go.
and yeah, with Havertz, it's just, I mean, that's an excellent touch, right? It's an incredible job to take it down with one foot and essentially set himself up on the half volley for the other foot. I mean, it's so quick, and it happens it happens so fast, and it's so quick, so instinctively done. It's just a really nice shot. I mean, Havertz loves playing in the Champions League. He scores big goals in big games. He's a guy we've kind of missed a little bit at times, especially in the first half of the season. So hopefully he gets a little closer to form. We have some big ones coming up, and great little finish, and we're able to walk out of there a game that, by all rights, probably should have ended 0-0. We get to walk out of there 1-0, and we get to come home with a lead.
Well, and again, like we were talking about keeping on side and how that needs to be part of what you're always aware of. You see with him, like when you watch the play unfolding, like he's indicating with his arm, like for Martinelli to pass it ahead of him, and he keeps on side until the pass is made. And he's well offside by the time he receives the pass, which is legal, obviously.
Well, but he's not offside. He made that's the well-timed run. Exactly. You want to be in that position where when you receive the ball, you're behind the defender. You have to be back there when the pass gets made, of course.
Yeah. So no, it was a good job all around, and just another one of those instances of our subs saving the day. So I mean, are you in the habit of referring to them or thinking them as finishers or closers, like I'm hearing some do?
It's linguistically it's a tough shift because obviously they're substituting in, but I mean right. There is a mental bit to that, right? That they're brought in to close out the game. Obviously, I think the problem is I watch too much baseball, so closer's a guy who comes in to finish off a game you're already ahead, right. As opposed to winning a game that's level. But it's still right. The idea that it's the idea they're trying to inculcate, and it isn't working quite as well as we'd like. We've had to use it a little bit more than I think anyone would want to, but right, that idea that every player in the club is going to contribute at some point or another, and just because you're not starting doesn't mean you aren't. I mean, subs have always been important, but just because you're not starting doesn't mean that you don't potentially have a role to play.
So we played Bournemouth over the weekend, and a situation for me kind of came to a head where another time there was a match that I just couldn't watch, even though I thought I had found every clever way that I could. And this was at 7:30 in the morning Eastern time, which anybody who knows me will know there's like zero chance of me getting up that early unless I absolutely have to. And I didn't think I absolutely had to because I thought that I would have a replay available to me. Well, it turns out even if I had gotten up, I would have been even more upset at the situation. But basically, so I had talked a couple weeks back about watching the Spanish language version, which was still available to me, right? Well, apparently this wasn't on Telemundo. It was on Universo, like just the regular NBC, Spanish language NBC or whatever. And that is not in the cable package that I have available to me. So I could not watch it at all. And the short version is I am now a YouTube TV subscriber. It's like I don't want this to happen again. This match did end up having the full match replay posted to the Arsenal site by the end of the day, but I wanted to watch it earlier. I wanted to watch it before I went out into the world for the day, just a little bit later when it was live. So I signed up for YouTube TV, which will give me not only USA, where I believe this match was, but also NBCSN, which is not broadly available. It's not available, I think, even if I were to sign up for a cable subscription here, I don't think I could get it. So YouTube TV will get me basically everything that I don't have through Peacock. And it's actually cool when you set up YouTube TV, you can tell it which teams you watch, and it'll automatically add those games to your DVR for you when they happen. So I should not ever have to be in this position again, as long as I continue paying $55 a month for the next calendar year after the 10 or 14 day trial is up, and then $65 a year thereafter. I just sign up for what they call their sports package. So it's not like a whole ton of channels. It's the channels that they say you need to watch sports, which from an Arsenal perspective looks like that's true. I don't know if it gets me yes to watch the Yankees without doing VPN trickery, but yeah. So I now have YouTube TV.
Yeah, the wonderful world of sports on TV. Well, I'm going to tell you something. You didn't miss much.
So yeah, that left me basically having the results spoiled and therefore not terribly caring about seeing the entire full match replay. And I just watched the extended highlights. And so I'm going to be leaning heavily on you for this one. So where do you want to begin the discussion?
Where do we start? Let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about the lineup. The big news, and we didn't really touch on this in the Sporting game. So I talked about one of the players I really liked in Sporting against Sporting was Martin Odegaard. I thought he did a really good job sort of controlling the play. You can see the value he brings to the side, et cetera, et cetera. We've said all these things so many times before. He came off at about the 70th minute. Now, my general thought was, and it looked like he had kind of gotten a knock, but I think we both all kind of had the sense that Odegaard's not going to go the full 90 minutes. That's not
at this point.
Working his way back from injury, we're not expecting that. Turns out he was actually hurt in that moment, and was unavailable for this game, as was Calafiori, as was Timber, although that wasn't new, as was Saka, still not back yet. We have a tremendous amount of depth in this squad, and it's good because we actually are using quite a lot of it. I do think, I do think we've talked about the lack of rotation and everything. I think to a certain extent, and I suppose I could argue we should see a little more Christian Norgard at times, but I do think a big thing that we've just kind of, it's been something we've had to push through, and we've done a good job overall to this point. But one of the things we've had to push through is that old sense of the cluster injuries, right? That it's not that you have X number of guys get hurt. It's that all these guys who play the same position get hurt.
Right.
And so you have, how many times have we seen either White or Timber at right back and just, and some of you cross your fingers because the other one isn't on the bench. You can't play, we can't do it. And this one, I look at this lineup. I mean, you had Raya in starting, Gabriel and Saliba, of course. Ben White plays right back, which, as we said, he's had some struggles as of late. Miles Lewis-Skelly comes in at left back. And I'll be honest, I thought he was actually okay in the Bournemouth game. I certainly, but also some of that's a little bit of some of the poor performances he's put in previous weeks. We've got the midfield, Rice, Zubimendi, and Havertz. Havertz is not really our best creative hub. I think he does combine okay with Gyökeres, but it's not quite his strength. And Rice and Zubimendi is a very kind of very defensive midfield. And then you've got, Madueke and then Gyökeres. And I think Gyökeres has been better as of late, but still, we sort of see some of his limitations. And then again, players of limitations, Madueke. And look, Martinelli, Madueke, Gyökeres is not a very dangerous front line. How many times have we've seen that a couple times this year? We know what they're not really capable of. And so, yeah, it's a kind of a lineup you look at and just sort of say, man, this is, I think our best creative hub. 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 I think against it's not as good as you would like at this stage of the season, and against a Bournemouth team that has given us problems. Like Bournemouth is not Bournemouth's a team that's generally played us very well over the last couple of seasons, and none of this, by the way, excuses the fact that it was a pretty dreadful performance. Like let's not. I don't want to make excuses for what happened. This team needs to be better. This team needs to be better. They need to be more forward thinking. They need to be more, I hate to say just play with more confidence, but you have the best record in England. You have the best record in the Champions League. Like, I'm sorry, you have why is there a lack of, it feels like there's a lack of confidence. Where does that come from? I mean, are they tired? Sure, Zubimendi's clearly knackered, but it's frustrating because the game, let's be honest, was a giant egg. It was not good.
Yeah, so let's get into some of the details there. So from what I saw on the highlights, it looked like we had a pretty bad lapse that resulted in that first goal. You want to tell me more about what happened there?
Right. So the winger comes down on that right side, or the Bournemouth player comes down the right side. And I don't think it was Tavernier, or maybe it was Truffert who was coming down. I honestly don't remember all of them, so I want to be careful about names just so I don't get them wrong. But they had a player coming down the wing, and my impression watching that, and they talked about this a little bit on the show. By the way, I watched this game at home because I didn't really want to drive out at 6:30 in the morning. I don't want to. I woke up for 6:30, but so I got a little bit more of the actual commentary, and then I usually get. And I mean, they blamed, and I think rightly so, Madueke. Kind of, he notices the man before he makes the run, and then he kind of turns away and just kind of loses him. And it's a great pass in, sort of like we talked about with Sporting. It's a really good pass to find him, but it's a good pass. He makes the pass, and then the ball comes in, and it deflects off Saliba. Is it a little lucky? The deflection sort of allows Junior Krupi to be free on the far post. Yeah, but I think that's a lot of little errors adding up, and all of a sudden you find yourself down on a goal that frankly they deserved. It worked it well. We made a mistake. I mean, you look at it and it looks like Ben White should be stepping out, but White clearly seems to think it should be Madueke following him because White's tracking another runner into the box.
Mm-hmm.
It's just poor.
The guy who serves up that cross, like he was just in a playland. He could have done anything over there. Right. No one near him. Yeah.
And it's frustrating because that's the kind of play that they like as a team. You think at least they know better, and it doesn't. How much of that is mental exhaustion? Like in a lot of ways, tiredness doesn't always reveal itself in terms of players being slow. It's mental exhaustion, like guys switching off. But I don't know. White sure they did give Madueke a look, and we know Madueke is not as defensively responsible as Saka or even Martinelli, and so it's one of those moments you kind of watch and go, "Oh dear, that's not great. It's not great."
Yeah,
and now we're chasing the game.
Yeah, luckily this time though we didn't need to chase it for a very long time before we had what looked to me like a case of ball to hand, which we've talked about not really mattering so much in England because it was a handball in the box.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I've heard some random comments, or read, I should say, random comments floating around about, I don't know, was it a penalty or not? Like, hands in an unnatural position. It's way out from his arm. It's way out from his body, and it hits him in the hand. I don't think it's deliberate. I don't think he's sticking it out to make a play or anything. But that's a handball. This is not a complicated. Michael Oliver even kind of takes a moment and goes, "Oh yeah, penalty." Like there's a pause, but then he goes and points right to the spot, and VAR confirms that's a penalty. And what frustrates me about that is obviously that play comes off of a kind of a scramble following a corner, and Gabriel, I think, is the one who kicks it and hits into the defender's hand. To me, that's the kind of thing we should be able or willing to do a little bit more of, like throw the ball into the box, into those situations. And it seems like at times we're content to kind of pass the ball around a little bit. Like we have no problem slinging it in from corners. Like why not try a cross in? And look, I know it's a lower percentage play. I know obviously Gabriel isn't camped out on the other team's penalty spot, in those situations, but I feel like there's some value in sort of creating some chaos in those opportunities, especially when so many teams do such a good job packing the box and preventing chances. Look, Bournemouth wasn't sitting 10 men behind the ball and daring us to break them down. They weren't parking the bus, but we had a couple of times where we just couldn't get a clean look on goal because there were defenders back and ready. And this is kind of one of those things that just start, I don't say just constantly pump it in the box, but try it a couple times and you're going to find yourself in a situation where they're going to make mistakes. I mean, we talked about this with all those own goals we got earlier in the year, right? On some level, yeah, it's an own goal. It feels like it doesn't really count. How many of those did we generate and say to ourselves, look, if the defender doesn't touch it, we've got a man there. So that's the kind of thing that I kind of watch and just those are the opportunities you create for yourself. And it just feels like we've kind of lost that, which is frustrating because in terms of the penalty, they give it to Gyökeres. I mean, that makes that look easy, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I see he's becoming our penalty taker, which is what you would expect. And yeah, he's been doing a good job. I mean, as I was talking to my son while we were watching the highlights, I was like, look, that keeper guessed the right way. The ball was inches away from his hands. There's nothing he could have done about that. I mean, even if he'd gotten a hand to it, it was just hit so hard. And that was going in. Yeah.
That ball, the ball's hit is hit exactly the way it needs to be. And, that's... that's why the benefit of the doubt on these penalties almost always goes to the striker, right? Because there's so many different ways the keeper, for so many different things that the keeper won't be able to stop or anything.
Yeah,
and a guy like Gyökeres, he kicks the ball hard. He does, and
yeah.
There it is. It's 1-1, and at that point, especially coming into the half, you sort of feel like, okay, get to halftime, regroup. Second half, we can really kind of push through and take over, and that simply didn't happen. That we simply did not play particularly well. I thought we were. I don't say how do I want to say this? I don't think we were abject in the sense that there were points in the Southampton game where they were completely bossing us and we were struggling to stay in the game. Ultimately, we ended up paying for that. Zubimendi has a bad giveaway in his own end. They kind of swamp us defensively. We look like we're scrambling a bit, and it's a nice finish. But it's 2-1 to Bournemouth, and you can't say they didn't deserve it.
Yeah, it stinks. I mean, I saw in the highlights there was a moment before that where Victor Gyökeres was offside, didn't time his run right again, and scored, but had it called back. That is something he needs to work on. It looks like.
Well, that one I actually wouldn't have blamed on him. That was he actually, that one's not on him. He makes the run early. The pass comes in late, so that's when the pass has to be released. That was one if you watch the replay. I think the pass needs to be let go soon, a little sooner to get to him.
Okay.
But I also think that one, it's interesting that it frustrated me in real time because he looked pretty offside. And then they do that thing where they let the whole play run out.
Right.
And then they call it back with the offside. But you're just like, I don't know, he looked pretty clearly offside from the beginning there.
Right.
They showed the replay. One of the Bournemouth defenders is a little bit further back. He's on the... So Gyökeres is on the center of the field, but towards the far sideline. And the Bournemouth defender on the near side is actually a little closer than I thought. So maybe that did make a little more sense. But it is kind of frustrating sometimes when you see those clear offside, they don't call and just let it run out, even though they're going to bring it back. So that one was a little frustrating. But again, I think that one's more on the pass than Gyökeres.
Okay, that's a fair take. So the Zubimendi lapse led to them pulling ahead and ended up winning.
Yeah, I mean, we generated a couple opportunities on corners, but at that point, it's feeling a little desperate to grab a point at home.
Mm-hmm.
And we just kind of looked throughout. I guess that's the question. I've generally tried to put a very positive face on the season, and I'm a positive person. I think that's just part of my nature. But also, as I've talked about, this is something you do for fun, right? To watch this team and have a good time. It's recreational. And so to me, it's just more interesting to be generally optimistic about it. And I think for the most part, our record has justified optimism. And look, we've had poor performances throughout the season, but every team has poor performances scattered throughout the season. But they do appear to be stacking up a little bit. And I understand people are going to take issue with my interpretation of the Sporting match. I don't think it was a particularly poor performance on our part. I think that was much more deliberate and calculated. But a 1-0 win sandwiched around, losses in every other competition, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, and then the league. Yeah, and to competition, frankly, okay, City's pretty good, but I mean, losing to Southampton, losing to Bournemouth, like this is, it does start to pile up a little bit. It does kind of make you wonder, like, obviously we've talked about the physical nature of this and the way the injuries have hit us this season. And certainly sort of physical tiredness is the kind of thing you can see, but that's not really the conversation that surrounds us. A lot of what we're seeing is a conversation that kind of surrounds sort of our mental exhaustion, or really our mental fortitude. And we talked about this a couple of years ago. City, edges us over the line, and Rodri's there talking about like they have the mentality and Arsenal doesn't. And at the time, I thought that was kind of nonsensical, and I still think it is. I think that's self-fulfilling prophecy. But at this point, it is hard to sort of watch their performance in these games and not feel like they're just, in hockey you'd say they're gripping their sticks too tight, or in baseball they're squeezing the bat, like they're playing like they're afraid to lose. And it is kind of frustrating to watch. I don't know. I mean, as you're watching through this, I mean, obviously you only got the highlights here, but you've been a little more nervous about this than I have in the last couple of weeks, right?
A little bit. It's just we've had a lot of lackluster performances going on just even the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. Obviously, the cup defeats were big, but not isolated incidents on their own. I mean, like we've seen here and in other matches where we've just not put our A game forward. I mean, how much of that do you think is exhaustion physically versus mentally? Like if you had and the lineup, it's tough to put our fingers on like what could be happening, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know where I land on it ultimately. Like, what if you had to pick like a single overriding factor? What do you think? It's just fixture congestion, or do you think it is just like once we had the one big defeat in the cup final that we've been down on ourselves since then, or something?
I don't think it's that. I also don't think you can really narrow it to one thing. I do think, I think the fixture congestion plays a role in it, but I mean, City perfectly fairly will be able to point out they're dealing with effectively the same thing. Obviously there's talent. I think the injuries, we talked about this a little bit at the start of talking about this game. I think they play a bit of a role in that, the way they've been clustered. I know one of the big criticisms of Arteta is the lack of rotation. There hasn't really been as many moments you would want to be able to do that, because guys have been dealing with this injury and that injury. And so it makes it's not as if you can just suddenly turn around and go, well, okay, then we'll just rest this guy. Well, we can't.
Right.
Right now we're right wing. And again, are there moments against certain opposition in other places where we could have perhaps rested certain players? I will kind of bang the drum that we probably should have seen Norgard in the Premier League a little bit more often than we have. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that you can really point to any one particular factor. We look at the style of play. We're kind of a grinding team. We're not, a high octane swashbucklers who are going to go end to end. That's just not the way this team is built to play. That's not the way this team wants to play. In terms of the aesthetics of it, I don't really care. I'm pragmatic enough. Like I especially after the last couple of years, like if this is the best way to win, then they should do it. They don't look like winning much of anything right now, but I I hesitate to point it to really any one thing, and we've talked about this a little bit. I think the the bottlers, right, that Arsenal always collapses down the stretch, I think is not an accurate reflection of what's happened over the last 3 seasons. I think it's somewhat fair to say in what was the first one we saw, 22-23. I think it's somewhat fair then, but mostly in the context of it was they were too young, it was too soon, and they ended up falling out of it, into the Europa League spots. I think the next year we dropped points in 2 games from the start of the calendar year. If that's your definition of bottling, then that word has no meaning whatsoever. City City did the one thing they had to do was win every game. And so the Villa loss was frustrating, but it's hard for me to get there. And then last year, as much as we talked about Liverpool's weaknesses, we were behind them constantly. How close did we really get at any point? 5 points, 6 points? Right. Liverpool was kind of able to keep everyone at arm's length all season. So again, the idea that there's somehow this collapse in the club or in the players or chokers or any of that is just not reflective in how any of these seasons have played out. That being said, right now they are really kind of falling at the final hurdles, and it does feel it is starting to get a little disturbing, especially as we start heading into, obviously we have the big game next week. We entered the weekend up 9 points. We had a chance, at least temporarily, to go up 12 with us playing on Saturday, City playing on Sunday. Instead, we lose the game, so the margin remains 9. City beats Chelsea, freaking useless Chelsea. They have a game in hand, that Crystal Palace game they haven't played because it got rescheduled with the Carabao Cup final. And then, of course, obviously, we go there next week. They beat Crystal Palace, they beat us on Sunday, and now we're level. And at that point, you really feel good about us going down the stretch. I still am not convinced City will win every game down the stretch. I just don't think this isn't that team. But the larger concern would be whether or not we have to make them need to do that, right?
Right.
And right now, we can't say that we're doing that right now, and that's kind of where I am. I don't know. So obviously, as we talked about the last couple of seasons, this is the first one, I think, that not only did we have these expectations coming in, but also given the performance up to this point, the expectations have kind of grown. How are you feeling at this point as we head towards this? We head through this rough patch in a critical moment.
I'm tense about it. It's, I remain cautiously optimistic. It feels like overall things have gone better for us and not worse. The injuries remain a really big area of concern. Like, to know that you can't play your best players and that many of them, that's not great. Like, it would be nice to have a lot of these guys we've been seeing every week to be able to bring them in fresh as subs sometimes instead of having them start and go 90 more often than not. But we're down to only the 2 competitions, which hopefully helps on all fronts. I mean, as far as players getting tired and the injured ones being able to recover and then play. I mean, hopefully they get to rest a little bit more when they start having like a week, or I guess, never mind. With the League Cup being down to the semis now, they're not going to really get a break from that, are they?
Yeah, the FA Cup we're going to get, but even with the semis, what that means is City is going to have City, because they're playing in it, will have another game rescheduled. I forget who it's supposed to be. And then they would also get another one rescheduled if they made the final. The final is the weekend before the end of the Premier League season. So, but they are also out of Europe, so they're going to have some midweek spots. They have some midweek spots available, right, to sort of shuffle some things around. Whereas we, of course, have Europe. I mean, I know we're obviously very down after this performance. I still feel we're in pretty good shape to go through Sporting. And so we're talking about 2 more games there with the semifinal.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, I would overall say I'm cautiously optimistic, and maybe more cautious than I would have been a few weeks ago. Tempering that optimism a little bit, but I still think we have it in us, and I really want to see it all work out on hopefully both the European and domestic fronts. But yeah,
I mean, obviously we take one of them. Obviously, I'm not going to get into at this point which one I'd want more or will be more, any of that. But I will say, obviously, I think this all looks very different in a week's time if we go up to the Etihad and get a result. I think if we walk out of there with a point, I think this changes the conversation entirely. I would sit here and say, I mean, I think most people would tell you right now a City victory feels most likely. But bear in mind how many of us thought that an Arsenal victory in the Carabao Cup was the most likely. I mean, look at the way City came into that game. They had dropped points in their 2 previous Premier League games. They had gotten pretty comprehensively knocked out of the Champions League. Like they were kind of, they weren't sliding, but they were definitely not in good shape. And then they turned in an excellent performance and have kind of gone off to the races from there. So, you know, the moral of the story, of course, is that our predictions mean nothing. But you know, I don't know. Again, we could go back a couple weeks, and or even coming into this weekend, the Athletic ran surveyed a bunch of their writers. Will Arsenal win the league? And they were all kind of like, yeah, probably. They did the same thing this morning, and they're like, well, I think City will win it now. Go back 2 weeks ago, oh, Arsenal win the league. 2 weeks before that, oh, City will win the league. This is kind of flown back and forth on this a lot over the last couple of months, and so if you're looking for a reason to feel at least somewhat optimistic, like we've seen these kinds of ebbs and flows for people before. It feels weird to us this season because, I mean, before the loss to City, we had lost 3 games total in all competitions. Now we've lost 3 of our last 4, which doesn't feel particularly good. But yeah, I guess I get the frustration. I get the anxiety. I'm feeling it too. Obviously, if this ends up with us finishing in second, if this ends up with us not winning anything, you know, I've had darker moments as a sports fan, but this would be pretty. This would be pretty bad. I think which is only going to add to the pressure, right?
I don't know if it's making me feel better or worse that I'm like rereading Fever Pitch right now. I think Nick Hornby's perspective, I think, tends to make me feel optimistic because he's just so down on everything. But it's like I'm starting to hear his voice in the back of my head, like, well, you know, they're going to mess it up because that's like what they do.
Yeah.
So,
I will say this: that's kind of how every fan sort of perceives it. Oh, that only happens to us. I was like, well, actually, it happens to every team. You know, this is kind of like, you know, I you'd be amazed the number of times teams will go through these kind of stretches, and then in 2 months when the season's over, and who knows, maybe we're at everybody's at a parade and just kind of forget these things happen. You don't know. I mean, or it could be the beginning of a spiral that sees us, you know, kind of fall apart. I don't think we're gonna like collapse and suddenly finish. I do believe we've officially clinched a spot in the Champions League for next year. England has clinched 5 spots.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure we're guaranteed to finish top 5. So we will play Champions League next year.
What event caused us to get the 5th spot? Was it just the way that we've done across all 3 of the European competitions?
Right. It's basically English teams advancing. You've got obviously Arsenal and Liverpool in the Champions League, Crystal Palace in the Conference League, and Aston Villa in the Europa League. So England's got 4 teams making their way through all 3 competitions, plus just the record they also, I mean, again, we had 6 teams make the knockout round of the Champions League. Like that's a lot of points to the coefficient. So the top 5 are guaranteed Champions League spots for next year. And I'm pretty sure I looked at the standings. I'm pretty sure we've clinched a top 5 spot officially.
Right. So should we seal the deal with Sporting next week? How are things looking across the rest of the Champions League? Who else is poised to advance to the semis?
Well, so, I mean, I think it's first of all, the one we want to start with is the Spanish derby there in the in the other quarterfinal, because that's, of course, they're bracketed to face the winner of our leg will bracketed to face the winner of that match. For the first time in 20 years, Atletico Madrid went into Barcelona and won. They beat Barcelona 2-0. A red card against Barcelona. Apparently, they spent a lot of the game camped out in Atleti's end, even with 10 men. So even though this tie moves back to Madrid, and Atletico is up 2 goals, I think it's far from over, but it does kind of darkly amuse me that, again, so much of the noise that happens around is just nonsense by people who just are, you know, hot takes and things like that. But given how Barcelona is suddenly the swashbuckling, one of the favorites, and obviously they'll beat Arsenal, it'd be very funny to me if they didn't beat Atletico Madrid. We'll see, of course. Who knows? It is perfectly. It would not shock me at all if our Barcelona came out, ripped them 5-1, and suddenly there they are in the semifinals again. Like, I don't think that's entirely unheard of.
By the way, I was curious what the Spanish term is for derby, and take this with an LLM-sized grain of salt, but ChatGPT says it's just derby, El Derby.
Derby.
So,
yeah, that's what I would have expected. Quickly on the other side of the bracket, though, Bayern Munich 2-1 winners at the Bernabeu. They beat Real Madrid. A late goal from Real pulled that one back. The sense I got from commentary outside was that Bayern was by far the better team. They're going back to Germany. It is the most played Champions League tie of all time, Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. And Bayern has been a thorn in Real Madrid's side as a top club, which makes sense. They're both obviously, European royalty, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And then in the other game, the holders, PSG, were home against Liverpool. They won 2-0, and by all accounts, it should have been 5. Just completely tore Liverpool apart. But they do, it's 2 goals, and now they go to Anfield. And on the one hand, Anfield has seen its fair share of magical European nights. Yeah. On the other hand, Liverpool do not look particularly good. Paris Saint-Germain look very good right now. And I would kind of guess at this point, I think the heavy favorites in all the ties are the leaders. I think Arsenal, Atletico, Bayern, and PSG are the favorites. If one of them doesn't make it, my guess would be Atletico, because Barcelona can overturn that. But we'll see. Yeah. I think, Bayern looks at Real, and is Real as good as they've been in the past? No, but it's the Champions League. They do weird things in the Champions League. Again, Anfield on a European night. All of these ties are still close enough to feel like they might be in the balance, but at the same time, it would not surprise me at all if the first leg winners all go through to the semis.
Right. By the way, just as far as our record against Sporting, this is something that I found amusing. Like, technically, they've never beaten us in spite of knocking us out of the Europa League a few years ago, because that still goes down as a draw. They beat us on penalties. So,
I thought they won that first leg. Was I wrong about that?
Yeah, no, looking at it here. So the first leg was drawn 2-2. The second leg was 1-1. So we have 3 draws. And now I guess the page that I'm looking at doesn't look like it's been updated for the most recent results. So we have now beat them twice. They've never beaten us. So for what that's worth.
I mean, yeah, a draw gets us through,
Yeah, exactly. This week, our midweek match was against Sporting CP in the Champions League, and then we played Bournemouth in the Premier League. So who is your player of the week this week?
This one was tough because I thought there were some solid performances throughout from the Sporting game. In particular, I said, Raya was man of the match. I thought Odegaard as well had a pretty good game. But then, of course, Odegaard didn't play against Bournemouth. Raya was not particularly good against Bournemouth. In fact, coming out of the Bournemouth game, I'm struggling to find a player to have too many positive things to say about them or their performance, including the guys who came off the bench. But across the 2 games, I'm going to say the player of the week across both games. I'm going to go with Declan Rice. Declan Rice does Declan Rice things. He's still running around pretty well, still does a good job kind of picking up the ball deep, pushing it forward, does a good job with his set-piece deliveries. I thought, in particular, most of the dangerous opportunities we had against Bournemouth came off of some really good corners and free kicks that he took. So I'm going to go with Rice as my player of the week.
Cool. As mentioned earlier in the episode, I am not burdened by any in-depth opinions on Bournemouth, having only been able to watch the highlights before we record. So I feel a little hesitation in going for Raya. I have not picked him much at all this season, and I think he's definitely deserved it a bunch. He is a key part of our lineup, and I definitely saw it in the Sporting match. And credit to him for some key saves and just kind of setting the tone like he does. It was appreciated. So we already covered this in some pretty fine detail, but what is coming up next week?
Well, the business end of the season. Wednesday afternoon, second leg of the Champions League quarterfinal against Sporting. That'll be at the Arsenal Stadium. And if you're watching, but since most of you probably won't be there, you can watch that on Paramount Plus, at least in the US. And then, of course, Sunday, it's the big one. Premier League game at Manchester City. That game will be on network television, NBC.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gonna be a big one. That'll be Sunday. I think about 10 o'clock my time. I think is about when it is. So late morning late one of the more later kickoffs. So yeah, be ready for that one. This is it. It's not over if we lose, but boy, we're in big trouble if we do. So let's really, as they say in Slapshot, let's really try to win this one, boys, huh?
Well, thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to the podcast version of our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, why don't you try watching us on YouTube with the link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to find that special someone in your life and do them the monumental favor of telling them about our little show. They'll thank you for it, and so will we. Everyone wins, right? We record the show using Zencaster. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our socials. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
So come on, you Gunners.